So, have you ever thought about how the KISS principle applies to our morning routines? I mean, why complicate things when we can just grab a simple croissant and get on with our day?
Yeah, but sometimes a little complexity adds flavor, like that almond croissant over there. It's all about balance.
True, but let's bring it back to coding. The idea is to keep things straightforward, so anyone can understand your code without needing a PhD.
Absolutely. Simplicity helps in maintenance too. But what about the dry principle? Isn't that also important for clean code?
Definitely. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself. You want to avoid duplication, so you don't end up fixing the same issue in multiple places. Like these lines here, see how they're repeating?
Right. But doesn't applying both principles sometimes lead to trade-offs? What if simplifying means duplicating some code?
That's where judgment comes in. Sometimes a bit of repetition is okay if it clarifies the intent of the code. Remember that project last year? We had this one module that was doing too much and became hard to maintain.
And refactoring it into smaller parts made it clearer and easier to debug.
Exactly. And each part followed KISS by being small and focused on one task. This way, even if you need to duplicate a piece later, it's less complex and more manageable.
Makes sense. It's like choosing between different pastries. Each has its place depending on what you need at the moment.
Precisely. Just like picking a pastry based on your mood or time constraints. Choosing whether to apply KISS or dry depends on the context of your code base. Speaking of keeping things simple, do you remember that project where we had to integrate the payment gateway? Initially, it looked like a huge mess with tons of nested functions.
Oh yeah, that was a nightmare. We spent days trying to untangle it.
Exactly. Leo. Once we broke it down into smaller, simpler pieces, it became so much clearer. Each function did one thing, and did it well.
That made debugging so much easier too. It's amazing how much time we saved once everything was simplified.
Absolutely. Another example is when we were working on the user authentication system. Originally, there were all these convoluted checks and balances, but when we streamlined it, it worked flawlessly and was way more maintainable.
True, sometimes less really is more. It's surprising how often complexity arises from overthinking rather than necessity.
And it's not just about writing new code. Maintaining old code becomes a breeze when it's kept simple. Like this one time, I had to update an old script for a client. Instead of diving into a labyrinth of conditional statements, I rewrote it using clear, concise logic.
Rewriting can be daunting, but the results speak for themselves. It must have been quite satisfying to see such an improvement.
It definitely was. Plus, the client appreciated the clarity and reliability of the updated version. So in both cases, new development and maintenance, keeping things simple, pays off big time.
No doubt about that. It's like ordering a classic croissant instead of something overly complicated. You get what you need without any fuss.
Exactly. Keeping things simple and short is like sticking to a classic croissant. Now, talking about the benefits of simplicity in code, have you noticed how much faster it is to read and understand someone else's code when it's straightforward?
Definitely. When the logic is clear, it takes less time to figure out what's going on. Debugging becomes a lot easier too.
Absolutely. Simple code also tends to be more robust because there are fewer places for bugs to hide. Fewer lines mean fewer opportunities for errors.
That's true. And when you're dealing with complex systems, having modules that are concise and to the point really helps in managing dependencies and interactions.
Exactly. Plus, When you keep your functions short and focused on a single task, it's easier to test them thoroughly. Unit tests become much simpler and more effective.
Right. Unit testing becomes a breeze when each piece of code does one thing well. It's like checking ingredients before baking. If everything is straightforward, you know exactly what you're getting.
And let's not forget about future maintenance. When you revisit code months or years later, having it simple means you don't spend hours deciphering nested loops and conditionals.
Agreed. Simplicity saves a lot of time in the long run. It makes collaboration smoother too, since everyone can quickly grasp what's happening without extensive documentation.
True, which brings us back to the idea that simple code leads to happier developers. Less frustration means more productivity overall.
Definitely. Happy coders write better code. Simple, efficient, and maintainable. It's a win-win situation all around.
Exactly. So next time we tackle a new feature or refactor old code, let's aim for simplicity first. It'll make our lives and our clients' lives a whole lot easier.
For sure. Keeping it simple should always be the goal.
Speaking of making life easier, let's talk about the dry principle. Have you ever encountered situations where you ended up with redundant code because you didn't apply dry properly?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Especially when you're under a tight deadline and copy pasting seems quicker than writing reusable functions.
That's exactly it. Copy pasting might save time initially, but it can turn into a nightmare later on. If you need to fix a bug or make a change, you have to do it in multiple places.
Absolutely. It's like having to adjust every single ingredient in several recipes instead of just one master recipe.
Precisely. So, how do we ensure we're applying dry effectively? For instance, when we were working on that logging functionality, extracting common patterns into reusable methods really helped.
Definitely. We created utility functions for logging different levels of messages, which made the code much cleaner and easier to manage.
Exactly. May yawn. Another example is handling database queries. Instead of scattering similar SQL statements throughout the code base, encapsulating them in a class or service layer can prevent redundancy.
Right. Centralizing those operations means less chance of introducing bugs and makes updates straightforward.
And don't forget about configuration settings. Having a centralized config file, rather than sprinkling constants everywhere, ensures consistency across the application.
Agreed. Centralized configs are key to maintaining consistency and reducing errors due to outdated values.
So, whenever we encounter repetitive patterns, we should look for ways to abstract them into reusable components. It's an investment that pays off in terms of maintainability and scalability.
Absolutely. Applying dry consistently leads to cleaner, more maintainable code bases in the long run.